The gunshot wound in her shoulder was still bleeding when Aaron Ashford found her collapsed against the fence post of his northern pasture, her dark dress soaked through with rain and blood, her face pale as morning frost on the Wyoming plains. He had been riding out to check on his cattle that September morning in 1882. The sky heavy with storm clouds that mirrored the loneliness he had carried for the past 5 years, since settling this ranch outside Rock Springs, Wyoming. At 32 years old, Aaron had grown accustomed to silence, to days that bled into weeks without hearing another human voice except his own when he talked to his horses. But finding this woman changed everything in an instant. "Madam." He dismounted quickly, his boots hitting the muddy ground with a splash. "Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes the color of summer wheat. She tried to speak, but only a weak sound escaped her lips. Blood seeped through her fingers where she clutched her shoulder, and Aaron could see the ragged tear in the fabric of her dress where a bullet had torn through. "I am going to lift you now," he said, though he was not sure she could hear him. "My ranch house is not far. I will get you help." She weighed almost nothing in his arms, her body trembling with cold and shock. He settled her as gently as he could across his saddle before mounting behind her, keeping one arm wrapped around her waist to hold her steady. The ride back to his ranch house took 15 minutes that felt like hours, the woman drifting in and out of consciousness, sometimes crying out in pain, sometimes going terrifyingly still. The ranch house was modest but well built, a 2-room structure Aaron had constructed himself with timber from the mountains. He carried the woman inside and laid her on his bed, the only real bed in the house, then quickly stoked the fire in the stove to warm water. His hands shook slightly as he gathered clean cloths and the medical supplies he kept for treating injured animals. He had never treated a gunshot wound on a person before, but he had seen enough injuries on the cattle trail to know the basics. "This is going to hurt," he said softly, even though she seemed unconscious. "I am sorry." He carefully cut away the blood-soaked fabric of her dress around the wound. The bullet had gone clean through her shoulder, which was fortunate. If it had lodged inside, he would have had to dig it out or risk her dying from infection. He cleaned the wound as thoroughly as he could with hot water and whiskey, wincing in sympathy when she cried out. Her eyes opened briefly, unfocused and filled with pain. "Please," she whispered. "Do not let them find me." "Who?" Aaron asked, but she had already slipped back into unconsciousness. He bandaged her shoulder with clean strips of cloth torn from an old sheet, then covered her with every blanket he owned. Her breathing was shallow but steady. He sat in the chair beside the bed and watched her throughout the rest of the day and into the night, stoking the fire regularly, checking her forehead for fever, changing the bandage when blood soaked through. She was beautiful, he noticed, even pale and injured. Her hair was the color of polished mahogany, spread across his pillow in waves that had come loose from their pins. Her face had fine features, a straight nose and full lips, high cheekbones that spoke of good breeding. The dress she wore, despite being torn and bloodied, was of quality fabric. This was not some common woman. She was educated, refined, someone who belonged in a fine house in a city, not collapsed in a muddy pasture in the middle of Wyoming territory. Who was she? And who had shot her? Aaron dozed off sometime after midnight, exhausted, but woke with a start when he heard her moan. Dawn light was filtering through the window. He leaned forward and found her eyes open, focused now, looking directly at him. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse but clear. "My ranch." "About 5 miles north of Rock Springs, Wyoming. I found you yesterday morning in my north pasture. You had been shot." She closed her eyes briefly, her face tightening with pain or memory. "I remember now. The wagon. They stopped the wagon. Who did?" Outlaws, 3 of them, maybe 4. I was traveling from Salt Lake City to Cheyenne. The stagecoach was attacked. She opened her eyes again, and he saw tears gathering there. They shot the driver. They shot everyone. I do not know how I survived. Aaron felt anger surge through him. Outlaw attacks on stagecoaches were common enough in these parts, but the brutality of it never ceased to make his blood run hot. Did you see which direction they went? North, I think. Or maybe west. I just ran. I do not know for how long. Everything after that is fog until I woke here. What is your name? She hesitated just for a moment, but he noticed it. Florence Reynolds. I am Aaron Ashford. This is my ranch. You are safe here, Mrs. Reynolds. How did you know I was married? He gestured to her left hand, where a simple gold band circled her ring finger. Her face crumpled then, and the tears spilled over. Was married. My husband died 3 months ago. Influenza. I was traveling to Cheyenne to stay with my sister. She is all the family I have left. I am sorry for your loss. She nodded, wiping at her tears with her uninjured hand. Thank you for helping me. I would have died out there. You are still not out of danger. That wound could become infected. You need to rest and heal. He stood and moved to the stove. I will make you some broth. You need to eat. Over the following days, Aaron fell into a routine of caring for Florence. He changed her bandages twice daily, made simple meals she could eat, and helped her sit up when she was strong enough. She slept most of the time at first, her body fighting to heal itself. He moved his bedroll to the other room to give her privacy, and tried to go about his usual ranch work during the day. But he found himself hurrying through his chores so he could return to the house and check on her. By the end of the first week, she was sitting up on her own and insisting on getting out of bed despite his protests. He helped her to the chair by the window, where she could look out at the vast expanse of his property, the rolling grassland that stretched toward the mountains in the distance. It is beautiful here, she said, her voice stronger now. Lonely, though. Yes, Aaron admitted, it can be lonely. How long have you been here alone? 5 years. I came out from Missouri after my parents died, wanted to make a fresh start, build something of my own. No wife. She asked the question carefully, not quite meeting his eyes. No wife. There was someone back in Missouri, but she did not want the life of a rancher's wife. She married a banker instead. Florence looked at him then, really looked at him, and he felt something shift in the air between them. Her loss, she said quietly. The days turned into 2 weeks. Florence grew stronger, though her shoulder still pained her and she could not use that arm much. She insisted on helping around the house despite Aaron's objections, first with small things like folding laundry or stirring soup, then with more involved tasks like mending his clothes and organizing his chaotic kitchen. The house, which had always felt empty to Aaron, suddenly felt like a home. They talked in the evenings, long conversations by lamplight that ranged from their childhoods to their dreams, from books they had read to places they wanted to see. Florence had been educated at a finishing school in Philadelphia, her family once well-to-do before her father's business failed. She had married young, at 18, to a man named Thomas Reynolds who had been kind but sickly. They had lived in Salt Lake City, where he worked as a clerk, and she had nursed him through various ailments until the influenza finally took him. I loved him, she told Aaron one night, but it was not the passionate love you read about in novels. It was comfortable, safe. He was my friend. That is still valuable, Aaron said. Many people do not even have that. Yes, I was fortunate in that way. She was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. But I always wondered what it would feel like to have that fire, that overwhelming feeling that makes you willing to risk everything. Aaron felt his heart beat faster. He had been trying not to think about how much he looked forward to seeing Florence each day, how her smile had become the best part of his routine, how the house would feel unbearably empty when she left. He was falling in love with her, he realized. Perhaps he had been since the moment he found her, 3 weeks after Aaron found her. Florence received word that the sheriff in Rock Springs had arrested the outlaws who attacked the stagecoach. Aaron had ridden into town to report the attack and check for news, and the sheriff asked to speak with Florence as a witness. Aaron helped her into the wagon for the trip to town, her first time leaving the ranch since she arrived. Rock Springs was a rough town, built on coal mining and cattle ranching, with a main street of wooden buildings and muddy roads. The sheriff's office was next to the general store, and Sheriff William Cooper was a gruff man in his 50s who treated Florence with respect when Aaron brought her in. "Mrs. Reynolds, I am glad to see you survived. You were the only one from that stagecoach who did." Florence paled at this news. "I was afraid of that. The driver, and there was another woman, older than me, and 2 men. All dead, I am afraid, but we caught the men who did it. 4 of them, holed up in an abandoned mine north of here. I need you to identify them if you can." She agreed, though Aaron could see her hands trembling. The sheriff brought her to the jail cells in the back, where 4 rough-looking men sat behind bars. When they saw Florence, one of them sneered. Well, the little bird who got away should have chased you down and finished the job." "That is enough," the sheriff barked. He turned to Florence. "Are these the men?" "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. "All 4 of them." "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. They will hang for what they did." As they left the sheriff's office, Florence swayed on her feet and Aaron caught her elbow to steady her. "Are you all right?" "Yes, just overwhelmed, seeing them again." She shuddered. "They cannot hurt you now." "Come on, let me take you home." Home. The word slipped out naturally, and he realized it was how he thought of his ranch now, not just his home, but theirs. They were halfway back to the ranch when Florence spoke again. "Aaron, I need to tell you something." Something in her tone made him glance over at her. She was staring straight ahead, her jaw set with determination. "What is it?" "I have not been entirely honest with you." His stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "My name is Florence Reynolds, and my husband did die 3 months ago. But I was not traveling to Cheyenne to stay with my sister. I do not have a sister." She took a deep breath. "I was running away." Aaron pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to face her fully. "Running from what?" "From my husband's family." Thomas came from a wealthy family in Salt Lake City, a family with connections and power. When he died, I discovered something terrible. His father, Richard Reynolds, has been embezzling money from the mining company he runs. Thousands of dollars, stolen from the miners' pension fund. Thomas found out about it before he died and kept records, proof of what his father had done. He hid those records and told me where they were on his deathbed. He said I had to decide what to do with them, whether to expose his father or stay silent. Aaron felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. "What did you do?" "I gave the records to the authorities. I could not stay silent, not when so many miners and their families would suffer because of that man's greed. But Richard Reynolds is powerful, Aaron. He has politicians and lawmen in his pocket. When he found out what I had done, he sent men after me. Not the outlaws who attacked the stagecoach, but his own hired guns. They had already come to my house twice, threatening me, demanding I recant my testimony. I was terrified, so I bought a ticket on that stagecoach and left everything behind. The outlaws who attacked the coach, were they working for Reynolds? I do not know. The timing seemed too coincidental, but the sheriff said they were just common thieves. Maybe it really was just bad luck. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I am sorry I lied to you. You have been so kind to me and I repaid you with deception, but I was afraid. I did not know if I could trust anyone. Aaron was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she had told him. Finally, he said, "Why are you telling me now? Because you deserve to know the truth. And because Richard Reynolds' men might still be looking for me. By sheltering me, you could be putting yourself in danger. You have the right to know what you are dealing with." He looked at her, at this brave woman who had lost her husband, had been shot and hunted, but still chose to do the right thing even when it cost her everything. His heart swelled with emotion. "I am glad you told me," he said, "and I want you to know that it does not change anything. You are safe here, Florence. I will not let anyone hurt you. Aaron, you do not understand what these men are capable of. I understand that you did the right thing. I understand that you stood up against corruption and greed even though it meant losing everything. That takes real courage." He reached over and took her hand. "I also understand that I have come to care for you deeply, more than I should probably given the circumstances, but I cannot help how I feel." She squeezed his hand, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I care for you too, so much that it frightens me. I never expected to feel this way again, especially not so soon after Thomas died. But you have shown me such kindness, such strength. You make me feel safe in a way I have not felt in a long time." "Then stay," Aaron said. "Not just until you heal, but for good. Stay here with me. Help me turn this lonely ranch into a real home." "Aaron, are you asking what I think you are asking?" He climbed down from the wagon and came around to her side, taking both her hands in his, despite the pain he knew it must cause her injured shoulder. "Florence Reynolds, I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other for 3 weeks, but I fell in love with you the moment I saw you, and every day since has only made me more certain. Will you marry me?" She laughed and cried at the same time. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, gentle and careful of her injury, and the world seemed to fall away. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling like fools. "We should probably tell the sheriff about Reynolds' men," Aaron said practically. "If they are still looking for you, we need to be prepared." They drove straight back to Rock Springs. Sheriff Cooper listened to Florence's story with a deepening frown. "Richard Reynolds," he said when she finished. "I have heard that name. Big mining family from Salt Lake City." "You are right that he has a lot of influence, Mrs. Reynolds. But Wyoming is not Utah, and his reach does not extend as far here. If any hired guns come looking for you in my territory, they will have to answer to me." "Thank you, Sheriff," Florence said. "That gives me some peace of mind." "There is one more thing," Aaron said. "Mrs. Reynolds and I plan to be married. I wanted you to know, as you are the law around here." The sheriff raised his eyebrows but smiled. "Well, congratulations to you both. Reverend Matthews can perform the ceremony whenever you are ready." They were married a week later in the small church in Rock Springs, with the sheriff and his wife as witnesses. Florence wore a simple blue dress purchased from the general store, and Aaron wore his only suit, brushed clean and pressed. It was not a fancy wedding, but as Aaron slipped a gold ring onto Florence's finger and kissed her as his wife, he felt happier than he had ever been in his life. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, Aaron careful of Florence's healing shoulder, both of them marveling at the fact that they were truly together now. Afterward, as they lay in bed with Florence's head on Aaron's chest, she said, "I never thought I could feel this way. When Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over, but you have given me hope again. You have given me a future." "You have given me the same," Aaron said, kissing the top of her head. "I love you, Florence Ashford. I love you too." The weeks turned into months. Florence's shoulder healed completely, though it ached in cold weather. She threw herself into life on the ranch, learning to milk cows and gather eggs, tending a vegetable garden she planted near the house, and even learning to ride a horse. Aaron taught her everything patiently, delighting in watching her confidence grow. They hired a young ranch hand named Billy to help with the heavier work, a quiet 18-year-old boy from town who needed the work and proved reliable. With his help, Aaron was able to expand his herd and improve his fences. The ranch was prospering, but more than that, it felt alive in a way it never had before. That winter brought heavy snows that isolated the ranch for weeks at a time. Aaron and Florence spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, playing cards, and making love under piles of warm blankets. It was a peaceful time, but Florence could not entirely shake the worry that Richard Reynolds' men might still come looking for her. "Do you think he has given up?" she asked Aaron one night in February, after a particularly bad storm had kept them housebound for 3 days. "I do not know," Aaron admitted. "But even if he is not, we are ready. I have my rifle, and Sheriff Cooper knows to be on the lookout." "You are not alone anymore, Florence. You have me, and I will protect you with everything I have." Spring came late that year, not breaking until late April. On a warm day in May, as Florence was hanging laundry and Aaron was repairing a broken gate, Billy came riding up fast from the direction of town. "Mr. Ashford," he called. "Sheriff sent me. Says there are 3 men in town asking questions about Mrs. Ashford. He thought you should know." Aaron felt ice run through his veins. What kind of men? Hard-looking men, according to the sheriff. They said they were looking for a woman matching Florence's description. The sheriff told them he did not know anyone like that, but he is worried they will start searching the surrounding ranches. Aaron helped Florence down from the clothesline where she had been reaching to hang a sheet. Her face was pale but determined. "They found me." "We do not know that for certain," Aaron said, though he suspected she was right. "But we are not taking any chances. Billy, ride back to town and tell the sheriff we need his help. Florence, you are going to stay in the house with my rifle. I am going to make sure the ranch is secure." "Aaron, maybe we should all go into town. We would be safer there." "If they are already in town asking questions, going there is exactly what they want. Here we have the advantage. We know this land and they do not." Florence nodded reluctantly. She had learned over the past months to trust Aaron's judgment, and she knew he was right. The 3 men arrived at sunset, riding slowly up the main road to the ranch house. Aaron was waiting on the porch, his rifle across his lap, trying to appear relaxed even though every muscle in his body was tensed for action. Florence was inside with her own rifle, watching through the window. The men looked exactly as Billy had described, hard, dangerous, the kind of men who killed for money. The leader was tall with a scar across his cheek, his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. "Help you gentlemen," Aaron called out, looking for someone. Scarface said. "A woman. Dark hair, late 20s, might be going by the name Reynolds. Heard she might be in these parts." "Heard wrong then, just me and my ranch hand here." The man's eyes narrowed. "That's so." "Because we heard tell in town that a man matching your description brought a wounded woman to see the sheriff a few months back." "That you, mister?" Aaron's mind raced. They had done their homework. "I found an injured woman in my north pasture, yes, but she healed up and moved on. Headed east, I believe, toward Nebraska." "Where exactly did she go?" Did not ask for her travel plans. "She was gone within a few weeks." The other 2 men had spread out slightly, flanking their leader. One of them was looking at the house a little too carefully. "Maybe we should take a look inside," Scarface said, "just to be sure." "This is my property," Aaron said, standing, "and you are trespassing. I suggest you move along before the sheriff gets here. I sent word to him the moment I saw you coming." It was a bluff, but it worked. Scarface hesitated, clearly weighing his options. He knew that if they started something here and the law arrived, they would be the ones in trouble. "We will be around," he said finally. "And if we find out you have been lying to us, we will be back." They rode off, but Aaron knew this was not over. He waited until they were out of sight before going inside, where he found Florence standing by the window, her face white but her hands steady on the rifle. "They will come back," she said. "And next time they will not just ask questions." "Then we need to end this," Aaron said. "We need to take the fight to them, to Reynolds himself." "How? He is in Salt Lake City, surrounded by his money and influence. But his men are here. And if something were to happen to them, if they failed to complete their job, he would have to think twice about sending more." Florence looked at him with surprise. "Aaron, you are not a killer." "I am not planning to kill anyone if I can help it." "But I am not going to let them take you, Florence. I am not going to lose you." Sheriff Cooper arrived an hour later with 4 deputized men. Aaron told him everything about the confrontation, and the sheriff's face grew grim. "I ran those men out of town, but they are camped about 3 miles north. I can arrest them for trespassing, but without proof they are planning violence, I cannot hold them long." "What if we had proof?" Florence said suddenly. "What if we could get them to admit what they are doing?" "How?" the sheriff asked. Florence explained her plan. It was risky, but it might work. The next day she rode into Rock Springs alone, making sure she was seen around town. Word would get back to Reynolds' men that she was there, vulnerable and unprotected. She waited in the hotel, Aaron and the sheriff watching from concealed positions nearby. Sure enough, within hours, 2 of the 3 men came looking for her. They cornered her in the hotel dining room. "Mrs. Reynolds," Scarface said, "we need you to come with us." "I am not going anywhere," Florence said loudly, making sure her voice carried. "I testified against Richard Reynolds, and I stand by that testimony. Mr. Reynolds does not take kindly to family betraying him. You have caused him a lot of trouble. He caused his own trouble by stealing from those miners. You are coming with us one way or another." He reached for her arm. That was when Aaron and the sheriff stepped out of hiding, guns drawn. "You are under arrest," Sheriff Cooper said, "for attempted kidnapping and making threats." The men reached for their weapons, but they were outnumbered and surrounded. Within moments they were in handcuffs, cursing and struggling. "You cannot hold us," Scarface spat. "Reynolds will have lawyers here by tomorrow." "Maybe," the sheriff said. "But you just admitted in front of a dozen witnesses that you are working for Richard Reynolds to threaten Mrs. Ashford here. That is a crime in Wyoming, no matter how much money your boss has." The 3rd man tried to escape when he heard what happened, but Billy tracked him down and held him at gunpoint until the sheriff arrived. All 3 were locked up, and the sheriff sent word to the authorities in Utah about what had happened. It took 3 months, but justice eventually came for Richard Reynolds. With the testimony of his hired men combined with the financial records Thomas had preserved, prosecutors in Utah had enough to arrest him. He was convicted of embezzlement and sentenced to 15 years in prison. His influence and money could not save him from the evidence Florence had bravely preserved. When word reached the ranch, Florence broke down in tears of relief. "It is really over," she said, clinging to Aaron. "He cannot hurt us anymore." "You were so brave," Aaron said, holding her tight. "You never gave up, even when it would have been easier to stay silent." "I had you," she said. "Knowing you were with me gave me strength." That fall, Florence discovered she was pregnant. Aaron was overjoyed, building a cradle with his own hands during the long winter evenings. Florence glowed with happiness, her belly growing round as the snow fell outside. "What should we name him?" Aaron asked one night, his hand on her belly feeling the baby kick. "Him? What if it is a girl? I have a feeling it is a boy, a son to help me run this ranch someday. If it is a boy, I want to name him Thomas after my first husband. He was a good man, Aaron, and I want his name to live on." Aaron felt a flash of jealousy, then pushed it aside. Florence had loved before him, and that love was part of what made her who she was. Thomas Ashford. It is a good, strong name. And if it is a girl, we could call her Annie after your mother. Aaron smiled and kissed her. That sounds perfect. The baby came in early April during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows of the ranch house. The town doctor arrived just in time, and after 12 hours of labor, Florence delivered a healthy baby boy with a strong set of lungs and his father's dark hair. "Thomas Aaron Ashford," Florence said, exhausted but glowing as she held their son. "Welcome to the world, little one." Aaron could barely speak through his emotions. He had never imagined he could feel this much love for Florence and now for this tiny person they had created together. "He is perfect. You are perfect." They settled into the rhythms of parenthood, sleepless nights and joyful days watching Thomas grow. Florence proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving, and Aaron discovered a tenderness in himself he had not known existed. When Thomas was 6 months old, they received an unexpected visitor. A lawyer from Salt Lake City arrived at the ranch with surprising news. Thomas Reynolds' mother had died, and in her will, she had left a significant sum of money to Florence, along with a letter. Florence read the letter with tears streaming down her face. Thomas's mother apologized for her husband's actions and for not protecting Florence when she needed it. She praised Florence's courage in coming forward and said that she was proud to have had her as a daughter-in-law, even if only briefly. "She left us $10,000, Florence said in disbelief. "Aaron, this is a fortune." "What do you want to do with it?" Florence thought for a long moment. "I want to use some of it to expand the ranch, to build the life we have dreamed about. But I also want to donate some to the miners' pension fund that Richard Reynolds stole from. Those people deserve restitution." "That is a fine idea," Aaron said. "You have a good heart, Florence Ashford." They used half the money to buy more land and cattle, building the ranch into one of the most successful in the region. The other half went to the miners, who blessed Florence's name when they learned what she had done. 2 years later, Florence gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Annie Grace. Then came another son, Daniel, and finally another daughter, Sarah. The ranch house expanded to accommodate their growing family, and hired hands worked the land while Aaron and Florence managed the business together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Aaron took Florence up to the spot where he had first found her, that fence post in the north pasture. It was a warm September day, much like the day they had met. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if I had not ridden out that morning?" Aaron asked. "I would have died," Florence said simply. "You saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You gave me love, a family, a home. You gave me everything. You gave me the same. Before you, I was just existing, not really living. You brought light into my darkness." They watched their children playing in the distance, Thomas now 10 years old and helping with the horses, Annie chasing butterflies, the younger two tumbling in the grass. "I never imagined I could be this happy," Florence said. "After everything I went through, all the loss and fear, I did not think happiness like this was possible." "You earned it," Aaron said. "You never stopped fighting for what was right, even when it cost you everything. That kind of courage deserves happiness." "We both earned it," Florence said, taking his hand. "We found each other against all odds and we built something beautiful together." As the sun set over the Wyoming plains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Aaron and Florence stood together watching their children, their ranch, their life. It had not been an easy journey. There had been pain and danger, loss and fear. but they had faced it all together, and their love had only grown stronger. "I love you, Florence Ashford," Aaron said, pulling her close. "I love you too," she said. "Forever." And there, on the land where their story began, they stood together as the day faded into twilight, grateful for every moment that had led them to this perfect evening, this perfect life, this perfect love. The years continued to pass with grace and prosperity. Thomas grew into a strong young man who took to ranching as naturally as his father, learning every aspect of the business with enthusiasm. He was patient with the animals and showed good judgment beyond his years. By the time he turned 16, Aaron was already trusting him with major decisions about the cattle and the land. Annie inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's determination. She learned to read and write with a voracious appetite for books, and Florence taught her everything she had learned at finishing school. But Annie also insisted on learning to ride and rope like her brothers, refusing to be limited by expectations of what young ladies should do. Daniel was the quiet one, thoughtful and observant, with a gift for numbers that made him invaluable when it came to managing the ranch's finances. Even as a young child, he could calculate figures in his head faster than Aaron could write them down. Sarah, the youngest, was pure joy, always laughing, always finding wonder in the smallest things. She followed her mother everywhere, wanting to help with cooking and gardening and caring for the animals. The ranch itself grew beyond anything Aaron had imagined when he first settled there. They now had over 200 head of cattle, a dozen horses, and had expanded the main house into a proper 2-story home with 6 bedrooms and a large kitchen where the family gathered for meals. They employed 4 permanent ranch hands and hired additional help during busy seasons. Florence became known throughout the region not just as Aaron's wife, but as a formidable businesswoman in her own right. She handled the ranch's correspondence, negotiated prices with buyers, and kept meticulous records. She also started a small school on the ranch for their children and the children of their employees, teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. On a bright morning in May of 1895, 13 years after Aaron found Florence bleeding in his pasture, the sheriff rode out to the ranch with news. Richard Reynolds had died in prison of a heart condition. The man who had once seemed so powerful and threatening was gone, and with his death, the final shadow over Florence's past disappeared. "How do you feel?" Aaron asked her that evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a ritual they had maintained through all the years of their marriage. "Relief, mostly," Florence said. "And sadness, in a strange way. He was a man who had so much and threw it all away because of greed. His son, my first husband, tried to do the right thing and it killed him. It is all such a waste. But something good came from it," Aaron said. "If things had not happened exactly as they did, we never would have found each other." Florence smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "You always find the light in the darkness. That is one of the many reasons I love you." "Only one of them," Aaron teased. "I was hoping for at least a top 5. She laughed, the sound as beautiful to him now as it had been 13 years ago. "Very well. Your kindness, your strength, your patience, the way you love our children, and the way you still make my heart race when you kiss me. Is that sufficient?" "It will do," he said, and kissed her to prove the last point. That summer, Thomas met a young woman named Margaret Hayes at a dance in Rock Springs. She was the daughter of a merchant, educated and well-spoken, with blonde hair and green eyes that captured Thomas's attention immediately. He was 19 now, old enough to think about his own future, and he courted Margaret with the same steady determination his father had shown in everything he did. "She reminds me of you," Aaron told Florence one night after Thomas had ridden into town to see Margaret for the 5th time that week. Smart, strong-willed, not afraid to speak her mind. Then she will fit right into this family, Florence said with satisfaction. Thomas married Margaret the following spring in the same church where Aaron and Florence had wed. It was a larger wedding, with the whole town invited, and a celebration that lasted into the night. Florence cried happy tears watching her son pledge his life to the woman he loved, remembering her own wedding day and how far they had all come since then. Aaron built Thomas and Margaret a house on the eastern edge of the ranch property, a wedding gift that allowed them privacy while keeping them close. Within a year, Margaret was pregnant, and Florence was beside herself with excitement about becoming a grandmother. "I am too young to be called grandmother," she protested to Aaron, though she was smiling. "You are 41 and beautiful as the day I married you," Aaron said, "and you will be the best grandmother any child could ask for." The baby, a boy named James, was born in early winter. Florence held her grandson with tears in her eyes, marveling at the continuation of the family she and Aaron had built. Aaron stood beside her, his arm around her waist, both of them understanding without words how precious this moment was. Annie caused quite a stir when she turned 18 by announcing she wanted to attend a teacher's college in Denver. Many in town thought it was inappropriate for a young woman to go so far away for education, but Florence and Aaron supported her completely. "I learned the value of education," Florence told the disapproving women at church, "and I will not deny my daughter the opportunity to pursue her dreams." Annie excelled in Denver, writing long letters home about her classes and her experiences in the city. She graduated 2 years later with honors and returned to Rock Springs to open a proper school, building on what Florence had started but expanding it to serve the whole community. Daniel showed interest in studying law, inspired by his mother's stories about fighting corruption and seeking justice. Aaron arranged for him to apprentice with a lawyer in Cheyenne, proud that his son wanted to use his gifts to help others. Sarah was the only one who showed no interest in leaving the ranch. She loved the land and the animals with a passion that equaled her father's, and by the time she was 15, she was as skilled a rider and rancher as any of the hired hands. Aaron secretly hoped she would be the one to inherit the ranch and keep it in the family for generations to come. In the fall of 1902, 20 years after they met, Aaron woke in the middle of the night with a crushing pain in his chest. Florence heard his gasp and immediately lit the lamp, her face filled with fear when she saw him clutching his chest. "Aaron, what is wrong, my chest?" he managed to say. "Hurts." Florence ran for Thomas, who rode into town for the doctor at breakneck speed. The doctor arrived within an hour and examined Aaron carefully. "It is your heart," the doctor said gravely. "You have had what we call an angina attack. You need complete rest, Mr. Ashford. No physical labor, no stress. If you do not take this seriously, you could have a full heart attack." Aaron protested, but Florence was firm. "You are going to follow the doctor's orders exactly. Thomas and the hands can manage the ranch. Your health is more important than anything else." It was a difficult adjustment for Aaron, who had worked hard every day of his life. But Florence was relentless in enforcing the doctor's orders, and slowly, Aaron learned to delegate and to find satisfaction in advising rather than doing. He spent more time with his grandchildren, teaching them to whittle and telling them stories of the old days. His heart troubled him on and off for the next few years, but with rest and care, he managed to avoid another serious attack. Florence never left his side during the worst episodes, staying up all night sometimes just to watch him breathe, terrified of losing him. "I am not going anywhere yet," he would tell her. "We still have too much life to live." In 1905, Daniel returned from Cheyenne as a newly certified lawyer and opened a practice in Rock Springs. His first major case was defending a group of miners who had been cheated of their wages, and he won a significant settlement for them. Florence attended the trial and wept with pride at seeing her son carry on the fight for justice that had cost her so much. Sarah married at 22, choosing a young rancher named William Foster, who had worked on the Ashford Ranch for 3 years. Unlike Thomas, who had built a house on the property, Sarah and William decided to buy land adjacent to the Ashford Ranch, expanding the family's holdings even further. They remained close, and Sarah continued to help manage the Ashford cattle even after her marriage. Annie, to everyone's surprise, fell in love with a banker from Denver named Charles Wright, who visited Rock Springs on business. They married when she was 26, and though she moved to Denver, she visited the ranch often with her husband and their growing family. By 1910, Aaron and Florence had 11 grandchildren between their 4 children, with more on the way. Their house was always full of noise and laughter during holidays and special occasions, and Florence thrived on the chaos and joy of being surrounded by family. On a warm evening in June of that year, as Aaron and Florence sat on their porch watching their grandchildren play in the yard, Aaron took her hand and said, "We have built something remarkable, you and I." "Yes, we have," Florence agreed. "A family, a legacy, a love that has withstood everything life threw at us. Do you ever regret anything? The life you might have had if things had been different?" Florence looked at him with surprise. "Not for a single moment. Every hardship, every challenge, every frightening moment led me to you and to this life. I would not change a thing. I love you, Florence Ashford. I have loved you from the moment I found you, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Aaron Ashford. You are my hero, my partner, my home. You always have been and always will be." They kissed as the sun set over the Wyoming plains, their grandchildren's laughter floating up to them on the evening breeze, a perfect soundtrack to a perfect moment in a life filled with both. Aaron lived to the age of 74, passing peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1924 with Florence holding his hand. She had nursed him through his declining years with the same devotion he had shown her when he first found her wounded and afraid. The whole town turned out for his funeral, and people spoke for hours about his kindness, his integrity, and the legacy he had built. Florence lived another 8 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren. She spent her final years writing down the story of her life with Aaron, wanting future generations to know how a lonely rancher and a wounded widow had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful. She died at 80 in 1932, peacefully in her sleep, in the same bed where Aaron had first cared for her 50 years earlier. Her children buried her next to Aaron on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky as vast and blue as the day they met. Thomas, now in his 50s, took over management of the ranch, but he kept everything as his parents would have wanted. The house remained a gathering place for the family, and the land continued to prosper under the Ashford name. On the anniversary of Aaron and Florence's wedding each year, the entire family would gather at the ranch for a celebration. They would share stories about their remarkable grandparents or great-grandparents, about the rancher who saved a wounded woman, and the widow who showed him what love really meant. The ranch still stood generations later, a testament to the power of love, courage, and the willingness to open your heart even when life has given you every reason to close it. The legacy of Aaron and Florence Ashford lived on in their descendants, in the land they had nurtured, and in the story of 2 lonely souls who found each other on the harsh Wyoming plains and built a love that would last forever. Their story became part of local legend in Rock Springs, told and retold by parents to children, a reminder that even in the hardest times, love could flourish. That sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as crises, and that opening your heart to help someone in need might just be the thing that saves you both. The fence post where Aaron first found Florence still stood a century later, weathered but sturdy, a silent witness to the beginning of a great love story. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew just right across the plains, some swore they could hear the echo of laughter and feel the presence of two souls who had loved each other so completely that not even death could truly separate them. Their love story had a happy ending, but more than that, it had a happy middle and a beautiful continuation in every generation that followed. Aaron and Florence Ashford had built something that would last forever, not because it was easy, but because they chose each other every single day, through every challenge, with courage and commitment, and a love that conquered everything in its path. And that was the greatest legacy of all.